as we continue to unpack all of the latest developments of the war here in Israel. And here at I-24, we continue to have teams on the ground covering all of the angles. In fact, I want to bring in my two correspondents. We have Mcauliffe from the northern Israel, as well as Pierre Klochendler in southern Israel right now, both covering the new developments, the latest developments on the ground right now. Mary, let's begin up north. It's been a relatively quiet day so far on the northern border with Lebanon, but what are you seeing and how are these tensions kind of increasing?
Well, it's been a bit quieter than it has been in recent days, but just moments ago we also got word from the IDF that they had struck an anti-tank missile cell, so a terror cell that was trying to fire these anti-tank missiles into Israeli outposts as well as Israeli communities. They said they were targeting two separate areas in Israel's north, very near the Lebanon border. These are areas that are just about a kilometer away from inside Lebanese territory. At the same time, we're also hearing reports from Lebanese reporters inside southern Lebanon saying that right now that there are airstrikes ongoing on certain areas inside those communities. So we are carefully monitoring that situation. We don't have any updates or acknowledgments from the IDF on what strikes are ongoing at this time. The only thing we have from them is them saying that they targeted that anti-tank missile cell. So clearly a lot of developments on the ground here, and the Israeli military as well as residents are absolutely on high alert and very carefully keeping an eye on this northern border.
And we are keeping our eye there as well as we continue to see some of those attacks. But now turning to our southern border as well, Pierre, we're hearing what's happening in the north, but in the south, that's where the real action is. That's where we continue to see more and more troops, more and more IDF going in and targeting these terror sites in Gaza. What have you seen the latest down there?
Right, the Israeli Air Force is pounding terrorist targets in the Gaza Strip, especially in the Jabalia refugee camp. At this moment, we hear the roar of the fighter jets. We've heard the ratata of the gunships. We've heard the outgoing shells of the artillery. And it's been going on since this morning, since we've been here. We've heard a lot. We see from time to time a mushroom. We're quite far away, actually. I mean, we are probably over 5 kilometers away from the battleground where we stand. But given that, what we understand according to those mushrooms, those explosions, that the IDF has surprisingly progressed quite fast from the north in the villages of Bet Hanun and Bet Lahia, where the fighting focused at the beginning of the ground offensive 5 days ago. Now they're already on the outskirts of the Gaza Strip. Jabalia is just a few hundred meters or maybe a kilometer away from the northern outskirts of the Gaza City. And it seems that the IDF has kind of cordoned off Gaza City from the north. The east Sajaiya neighborhood facing Nahal Oz, which was the site of a massacre on October 7, and from the south, Wadi Raza, where the IDF and the political echelon in Israel have incessantly, day and night, called the population in Gaza City to evacuate the battleground as soon as possible in order to save their lives. Now, the goal of the IDF, as far as we understand, is to clean that line of defense around Gaza City, and that line of defense is very intense and requires intense close combat. You have sniper nests there, you have anti-tank launchers, rocket positions. There were rocket fire on Ashkelon just a few moments ago. There are high tall buildings where Hamas terrorists can ambush the forces from above. You have ammunition and weapons depots. You have command centers, control centers, everything. So that's what the IDF right now, its ground forces, the Air Force, the Navy, the artillery are trying to dismantle at this moment. And the big goal is probably Gaza City, where the hospitals are located, Shifa Hospital, with its underground tunnels used by Hamas, Al-Quds Hospital, and also, eventually, to try and open safe passage corridors for the population to be able to leave the battleground. But right now, it's still time to shoot and not to talk. And it seems that those residents who haven't decided yet to leave Gaza City, to leave the battleground, are now probably stuck in the fighting.
Pierre, you mentioned that troops are continuing to go in, maybe faster than some people expected. And so as we have been waiting for this real ground operation, we continue to hear threats from Hezbollah, from Iranian proxies. Mary, on the northern border, we're seeing troops in the south. This is something that Hezbollah has threatened. If that happened, they would attack harder. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. That's not what we're seeing on the ground right now.
At least not at this point yet, Nicole. We continue to see these warnings coming out from Hezbollah, also coming out from Iran, calling against Israeli aggression in Gaza. That's what they're calling it, and saying that there will be a response if the actions do continue. But these are messages that we've heard really for the past 3 weeks now, and we haven't really felt a robust response here in this area. We've seen anti-tank missiles being fired. We've seen rockets being fired into northern Israeli communities, but it has still, for this point, stayed to be a pretty low-grade intensity conflict. That's not to say that people haven't died. There have been at least 6 Israeli soldiers who have been killed, 50 Hezbollah fighters estimated to have been killed, as well as civilians on both sides. And that's not to mention the tens of thousands who have been evacuated on both sides of this border. And today we also heard from the Iranian foreign minister in Turkey once again calling and saying that if Israel does not halt what it's doing in Gaza, if it does not stop this war immediately, that there will be a response. Specifying on what that response would be, we're still waiting to hear.
And we're all keeping an eye out there, and I know the IDF also preparing for any of that regional escalation on the north as well, but main focus being in the south because it continues to be bombarded with rockets, even as the IDF is operating in the Gaza Strip. I'm curious, Pierre, just yesterday, one of our correspondents, Pierre, while she was down there, the Israeli military told her that in the city of Sderot, they were no longer using the Iron Dome missile defense system because they're running out of Iron Dome batteries for that specific area, and they need to use these Iron Dome batteries in other places, such as central Israel, such as Ashkelon, as you said, were hit. What are you seeing or hearing as far as the Iron Dome capabilities down there?
Well, we've seen an Iron Dome battery taking down, or at least being launched to take down one of those rocket missiles just in the vicinity of Sderot. So I'm not sure that these anti-missile missiles are lacking at this point, and I'm not sure that Sderot is not defended as well by the anti-missile system. But I think that Sderot being a quasi-abandoned city, I don't think it's a target really for Palestinian Islamic Jihad, for Hamas. Hamas especially, that does possess longer-range rockets, is putting its emphasis more on the cities, on the big cities, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and even northern in Tel Aviv, or in the vicinity of Tel Aviv, the suburbs of Tel Aviv. So that doesn't mean anything at this point. I think that the capabilities, both of the IDF and of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, of Hamas, are still intact, so to speak. You know, in 2014, the terror groups carried rocket launching and strikes on Israeli territory until the last day of the operation then. And this is something that we should expect. And I think that the US is also replenishing the supply of anti-missile missiles.
Well, we're continuing to keep an eye on all of the activity that's happening on the ground. Pierre Klochendler, along with Mary Mcauliffe, thank you for your coverage on all of these latest developments happening within Israel's borders.